Data security is something we take for granted. We don't often think about the consequences until one of our devices gets hacked. I'm talking about password protection. It's a subject most of us overlook. Me too, until it's too late. And it's not just personal data. Companies face dire situations when a hacker gets into their records and holds them for ransom. I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for joining me here today on A Seat at the Table. Each week, I sit down with leading experts, innovators, and entrepreneurs so that we can benefit from their expertise and insights. Today, I'm speaking with Denis O'Shea, a technology expert and founder of Mobile Mentor, an endpoint ecosystem helping companies create the right balance between good security and employee experience. Mobile Mentor was named Microsoft's 2021 Global Partner of the Year for Modern Endpoint Management. In this podcast, Denis talks about why we all need to ditch our passwords, what's driving the recent surge in security breaches and ransomware attacks, and how to secure remote workers who are using their personal devices for company business, something that's becoming a lot more common these days in the work-from-home world. Before we get started, if you're in charge of a global supply chain and want a concise, fact-based view of what's happening in Asian markets, then you might want to look at the current situation in sourcing. These quarterly snapshot reports provide a lean, considered take on where the markets are and where they might be heading. They also include feedback from both buyers and suppliers, so you get a clear view of how other sourcing executives are reacting to issues facing the industry. To learn more, head on over to thecurrentsituation.net. That's thecurrentsituation.net. I'll put the links in the show notes and, of course, over on our podcast website. Now, let's listen to Denis and find out why we should get rid of our passwords. Denis, I'm really so happy that you're able to join A Seat at the Table, because I think that what you're doing is so relevant right now, because we're moving out of the pandemic. So yes, a lot of people are going back to the office, but there is a tremendous controversy over should we allow people to continue to work remotely? Should everyone be forced back to the office? And then, of course, there's that discussion around productivity. A lot of companies would, in a sense, like to be able to offer people remote working. There's pros and cons for employees. There's pros and cons for companies. But I think that managing that efficiently is becoming a challenge in many ways. So I'd love for you to initially just start by explaining what you're doing with Mobile Mentor.
Sure. Mobile Mentor is a services company, and we help organizations essentially get the balance right between their security so they don't get hacked and they don't get ransomed, and productivity for their employees so they can work anywhere they need to work. Could be at home, could be in the office, could be traveling. So enabling the modern workforce to be productive and secure.
I think that's really important. People are not only trying to work from home, but as you were alluding to earlier, people are also working from many different locations. So it's not just trying to have a secure home environment. It's also anywhere you may wish to be. I mean, I think that's part of the remote working sort of the benefit, right? You could be at the beach or you could be, traveling or something like that and taking advantage of the ability to work remotely. So how does that work? How are you able to achieve that level of security?
It's primarily using Microsoft technologies, which most companies have, right? Most people have Microsoft Office 365 or something like that. Right. What we're good at is making sure that technology is configured and turned on in a way that they're secure, but the security is not getting in the way of productivity. And that's the art in this, is making sure that, if you do need to work at the beach or wherever you want to work, you're able to do so and be productive without all these restrictions slowing you down. But that there is enough security in place that you're not the weakest link in your organization. You're not the one that got hacked and that led to a ransom or a data breach.
Right. Now, how are you able to do this? I mean, how are you able to create this kind of security anywhere?
It's really a matter of putting in place some good rules that are enforced by the technology so you can work on any device. That's the starting point. So you might have a personal laptop, you might have a personal tablet. It depends. It varies per person. So making sure that all your devices are secure. That's the foundation. And then making sure that your applications are patched, which means they're up to date. So any known software vulnerabilities are taken out as quickly as possible. And then that you have the right tools to do your work, and that the company is able to manage the security risk around you and your devices and your applications and your work. And also that, you as an employee are well educated on what are the risks and what are the things you need to avoid and what kinds of links not to click on and how to manage passwords and what to look out for. So part of it is education for employees. It's a bit of awareness. Part of it is having the right technology. Part of it is having some good processes in place to make sure that your devices and your software is up to date. So a lot of basics.
Right, right. And then just by having that in place, the technology that you're providing will work anywhere.
It will work anywhere on the planet. You just need to have an internet connection and you will be able to use the technology, and on any device, which is really liberating for the employee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important because in the past, individuals needed to have a separate dedicated laptop or computer just for their company's work. And that, oftentimes meant bringing 2 laptops with you when you traveled because you wanted to be able to do your own thing, right, in your leisure time. And then at the same time, you need to be able to log in for your work. So the fact that this will work on any device and will enable you to have that flexibility is fabulous.
It is. And if you think about what happened over the last couple of years, it was really interesting. Like for the previous 20 years or so before the pandemic, the way work happened didn't change very much. So what I mean by that is people came to work, they commuted, they went to work, they got to their desk and they sat down and logged into a machine or computer that was owned by their employer. And they worked for the day, and then they logged out and they went home. And work was work and home was home. And there was very little overlap between the two. And then during the pandemic, we saw 5 seismic shifts in the way people work in the short period of 2 years. First everybody was told, go home and try and work from home and do your best. And then we saw about a 500% increase in cyber crime.
Oh, really?
500%. It was extraordinary. And the cyber criminals very deliberately went after hospitals, schools, or government organizations. Tragically, the organizations that were trying to help us all get through COVID. And cyber criminals went after them. So the risk of working remotely suddenly went way up. Right. And then the next thing we saw happen, of course, was the big global chip shortage, where you couldn't buy a computer for the longest time. And so, to your point before, suddenly organizations had to say to their employees, we're now allowing you to use BYO laptops, bring your own laptop, because we can't supply you one. So now you've got people working remotely on a personal laptop in their apartment or their home on a consumer grade internet connection, and they're accessing their company's data remotely whilst under attack from cybercrime. Wow. So a lot of big changes happening there. Absolutely. And companies and government organizations and schools and hospitals are trying to deal with this and make sure that they're not the next ones to get hacked and have their patient data or student data exposed on the dark web or have to pay a stupid ransom to get their data back. Right. So typically the kind of cybercrime that you're seeing are people going after data. It's specifically focused on grabbing data from these rather large databases. Is that what you're seeing? That's a very typical pattern. And sometimes they can use that data and sell it. Like if it's patient records, there's a commercial value for every patient record. Sometimes it's just to embarrass the organization. It's to put all their data on the dark web and just force them to pay a ransom. Sometimes it's for other purposes, just to get competitive intelligence from an organization, get their patents or get their designs or their technology. But it's usually to get data, either to extract it or to encrypt it, which means to lock it all up in a way it's not usable anymore. And the company then has to pay the ransom to get their data decrypted so they can use it again. Right. Oh, that's terrible. You don't realize how bad that is until you happen to have that happen to you, right? Yeah, it's terrible. I had dinner on Saturday night with a friend of mine. He runs a large publicly listed company, whom you know, but I won't mention the name of the company. But they got taken down, and their board of directors decided not to pay the ransom, and they forbade the company from negotiating with the ransom the criminals. And so they had to rebuild their entire environment. And for them, it meant taking all their operations offline for 8 days. Wow. So in the quarterly report, they were able to say, here was the cost to us. It might have been cheaper to pay the ransom and get the data back quickly, but it would have been the wrong thing to do. Yes. Because it's just pouring money into crime. So they said, we took our entire operation offline for 8 days. This was the impact. this is what we did. Now we've recovered.
Wow, incredible. So realistically, you need to have a lot of layers of protection in place. And yet it seems to me that the more cybersecurity advances, crime seems to always be one step ahead. What can companies do? I think a lot of people are willing to invest in cybersecurity. I think most people realize it, especially like you say, if they have critical data. And yet it just seems to be that you can't keep up with the criminals are just that much cleverer.
You're right. They're a step ahead and they can move quickly. They're usually smaller organizations and they can move much faster than most large organizations can change or modernize their IT. So they've got an unfair advantage. Now, fortunately, the tools are getting better.
Right.
The IT community is getting wiser and more experienced. End users are getting more savvy and understanding and being more aware of what to look out for and being more careful. So as a society, we are getting better at protecting ourselves and our patient data, student data, citizen data. We are getting better, but there are still some gaping holes. And the one that worries me the most is passwords.
Right.
So very simply, we all have too many passwords today.
Yes.
And we just conducted a very large study at the end of 2021 to understand some of the realities of people working remotely. Because now, you've got millions of people working in home offices all around the world.
Yeah.
And we wanted to understand what's actually going on out there in people's home offices.
Right.
How are they coping? How are they managing with things like their passwords and all their cloud applications? And what we found is that, firstly, everyone's over it with passwords. Everyone's fatigued by having too many passwords, both for work and their personal lives. And, the number of passwords we need to juggle for all our work applications, and then, of course, all our financial applications and banking, and then our streaming services and our social accounts and everything else. It's just too much. And most humans are not able to memorize 90 or so long passwords that have numbers and characters, and we're not able to change them regularly. So we cheat, we hack, we find shortcuts. And the research shows that, a lot of people still use some variation of their pet's name.
Oh, really? Is that true?
As their password. Yeah. It's quite amazing. So a pet name with some variation, maybe a month or a season or a date or a number added to it. There's a lot of overlap between personal and work passwords. People are blending the two and using the same password for different things.
Right.
And that's what gets us in trouble. Because what it means is that hackers no longer have to break into our networks or break into our companies. They just log in with our weakest passwords.
Interesting.
They just log in. Their bots can figure out our easiest passwords, our weakest passwords very easily, and they can log right in. And so we're very vulnerable as a society. And if you think about it, passwords were invented in 1961.
Were they really?
Right? Yeah. So 1961 and in 2021, we found out how weak our passwords really are when we saw the huge explosion in cybercrime and ransomware. So they're a 61-year-old technology now. And if you think about it, how many other 61-year-old technologies do we use in our lives today?
Well, not many.
Not many, right? But we're still relying on these passwords and more of them. And the research we did, we looked at some of the behaviors that are happening for remote workers by generation. So we looked at Gen Z, young millennials, older millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. And guess what? Gen Z has the most passwords. Even though they've been in the workplace the shortest time, they've got the most passwords, the most applications, both in their personal life and their work life.
Right.
So the problem is actually getting worse right now before it gets better.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree? Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Wow, it's interesting, but what can you do? What's the alternative?
The alternative is that we all go passwordless. So we do away with our passwords completely.
What would that look like?
Passwordless. What that looks like is, it sounds like a daunting concept, but actually we're probably all much closer to a passwordless future than we realize. So do you have an iPhone?
I have a Samsung Galaxy.
A Samsung.
Everything
okay.
else that I use is Mac. It's interesting, but for some reason, when it came to the phone, I went with the
Galaxy. It's a great product.
Yeah.
And do you use like facial recognition on your Galaxy?
No, I use actually on this one. I use the fingerprint or something like that.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, I'd use that as the example. So you use your fingerprint to get into your Galaxy. Okay?
Right.
So that's a form of biometric authentication. So it could be your face if you were using an iPhone. It could be your finger. In the future, it would be your voice or a retina scan. You might say a word and it would listen to the timbre of your voice and say, "Oh, this is Jane Singer." Or scan your retina and go, "Yes, this is Jane," and log you in. So now you're logged into the Android operating system on your Galaxy device. Okay. That's the first step. And then all the applications you've downloaded from the Google Play Store that are trusted applications, you're automatically signed into them as well. And that's called single sign-on.
Right.
So you had one sign-on event, which was using your fingerprint, took you into Android. That took you into the applications. Now, if you want to get into a more secure account, like a bank account or something like that, you'll probably receive a 4-digit or 6-digit code by text message, and you punch in the code. And that's called two-step authentication or multi-factor authentication. So those three things together is how we go passwordless. It will be biometrics, single sign-on, and multi-factor authentication.
Interesting.
And we need to replicate that on all our devices. So you sit down, you look at your computer, it scans your face, it signs you in, puts you into all your applications, all your services. And then during the day, you may do the odd code to authenticate yourself again. But, I haven't typed a password for about 18 months because I've got these things working and most of our clients have these things working. And so we're able to live in this passwordless environment. And that's where society needs to go, because we know now passwords are the weakest link. And the combination of using our faces, our fingerprints, single sign-on, and two-factor authentication, that's a much more secure way to manage our identity.
I think that's a really interesting strategy, and I can see the brilliance behind it. But yet at the same time, I guess what comes to mind is that if everything has one sign-in, right, except your bank account where they send you a passcode and so on, if someone does manage to hack that one, they have access to everything. And then there's also, perhaps all the sci-fi, weird things that you think around having biometrics. But that would just come to my mind. Can you address that?
Yeah, well, if somebody could steal your biometrics, your fingerprint or my face, then we are in trouble. Right? Then we are in trouble at that point. But the key is having that two-step authentication turned on for all your accounts. Yeah. So people ask me about that and say, "Isn't it a pain?" And I go, maybe, but it's a much smaller pain than having to pay 48 Bitcoin to somebody who gets hold of your account and locks you out of your own email and social and bank and everything else. Right. So it's a tiny inconvenience to protect ourselves. And it really does give us amazing protection. I think it's something like 99.5% protection we get.
Is it really?
By simply having two-factor turned on. It is extraordinary, because somebody might figure out your password. The bots can figure out our passwords pretty easily. And they might log into your account with the correct username and the correct password. But then the two-factor code, they don't have that. So that's the bit that saves us. Right.
Wow, so interesting. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, people have become overwhelmed with passwords, and so you do become sloppy, and you have that little Post-it note on your computer that has all your passwords listed. They always, when you type it in, it comes up right in just those asterisks so that nobody can see it when you type it in. And yet there you have it, right, sticking up on the side of your monitor. So it's sort of moot.
You raise a very good point, because we asked people in the research we did, we asked them how they store their passwords, or how they manage all their passwords.
Right.
And some of the answers we got back were just mind blowing, really, really mind blowing. And keep in mind, the research we did was in 4 highly regulated industries that should
really?
be
Wow.
really secure. Yeah. So we picked on healthcare,
Okay.
education, government, and the financial industry.
Oh, wow.
Because
Okay.
they're
Yeah.
so well regulated.
Right.
They really should have their house in order when it comes to security. They should have secure password management tools. They should have good security awareness. They should have good security policies. All that should be in place.
Right.
We got some shocks. We found that 29% of people write their work passwords in a personal journal.
Ah.
So that is a crazy thing. And then we found about a quarter of people store their work passwords on an app on their personal phone.
Right. Yeah.
And then a lot of people write their passwords on Post-it notes, as you just mentioned, but also putting them in an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document.
I am guilty as charged. Yeah, I do the same thing, because like you said, there's too many to remember. And if it's something that you're not using all the time, right? You have to write it down. I mean, I have an algorithm for passwords that my brother's an IT guy. And so he taught me to create this algorithm, right? And it makes it easier to create a harder to hack password, and you can remember it more easily. And yes, part of it is a pet's name. To your earlier point, I was just laughing when you said that, because I thought, oh my gosh, yes, exactly. I use that as part of that algorithm. Yeah. But you're right. On other things where you're not able to generate your own password, which is often the case, it's provided to you and you're not using it all the time. You do have to have it somewhere where you could refer to it when it's like after 2 months, you need to log into this app, or even if it's just only, once a month or once a week, you just don't remember all of them. So you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. And the advice I generally give people is that if you're part of an organization that is moving to a passwordless future, that's great. We just need to hurry up and get there. If you're not, then the best advice I can give is to get one of those password management tools.
Okay.
And there's a whole bunch of them on the market, and they're cheap and they're good, and they're much better than a personal notebook or an Excel spreadsheet or an insecure app. So one of those products, there's a bunch of them, 1Pass, LastPass.
Right.
And essentially you can have one really long, strong password.
Right.
And I would advise to make it something like an entire sentence.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, something long that's quite obscure and a combination of different words altogether. And that's the master password to get into the vault. And inside in the vault, you can then have all your other accounts and passwords. And so you log in with the long password, and you can see all your accounts. You just click on them and it launches a bank account, or it launches a social service or whatever. That's a good interim step before we go fully passwordless.
Right.
Keeping all your passwords in one place with a very secure master password.
More or less for what? Personal things, I suppose, as opposed to companies using that? Oh, for both. Companies can use that also. Wow.
Yeah, both. So IT administrators can use that in companies to manage all the secure accounts. People can use it for their work applications and their personal applications, for both.
Right.
And some of those tools are free, actually. I believe LastPass has a free version of the product.
Oh,
so really, there's no reason to use those yellow Post-it notes anymore.
So in terms of what you're doing with Mobile Mentor, then, how does that come in between using LastPass or something like that? And I don't know, are you able to implement the finger scan technology, or how does what you're doing work?
What we typically help organizations is getting their strategy right and helping the implementation of going passwordless. And that's usually using Microsoft technology. So that if you're using a Windows computer at work, that you're able to get that facial recognition happening in the right way, and it's secure, and you're able to work, without passwords anywhere you are. That's one small piece of the puzzle. But it's just one small piece. I guess the bigger strategy is making sure that all the devices that people use are secure and up to date. That's probably the most fundamental thing, is making sure that all the devices are up to date and secure. And then all the applications are patched. Right. So that there's a good, secure foundation.
So what would that involve doing to make sure that everything is up to date and secure?
Firstly, understanding what are all the devices people have and putting some security around the data in the company. So if there's some secure the patient, let's say it's patient data, whatever, making sure all those applications are fully secured and that they're landing on devices that are known, that are managed, that are up to date, and that there's some good security policy in place and that people are well educated.
Right.
And so I think there are two great learnings from me in the research data we did. One is remote workers are just different in the way they operate and the needs they have from the organization. And they're not going away. Remote work is here to stay. It's absolutely here to stay. And we need to rethink and redesign some of the way work happens to cater for remote workers. We just have to. And it's going to become a competitive advantage for companies who really get it right. It's going to become a big competitive advantage. And for those who fight it and push back and try and insist it, you have to come back to the office. They're going to be at a disadvantage.
If you can work with people remotely, you expand the base from which you can hire people. So there's no longer those geographic boundaries. You're able to say, I may be based, let's just say, for example, in New York, but there's a guy in Texas who would be just the right one for me. If we can work remotely, I can hire him without having to go through relocation, which he might not be keen on and may be expensive for the company. So I can see why the proof of concept of being able to work remotely through a pandemic will open up a lot of opportunities for certain organizations. But you're right, security is going to be a big part of the picture.
It is. And I can see a future where entrepreneurial ventures happen in a slightly different way as well. I can see virtual teams forming based on expertise, not on geography. And you're just bringing together the best skills in the world, right. Really fantastic skills in a unique blend to say, we are the best team to do this piece of work. And winning in a credible sense because it genuinely is a unique combination of great skills.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. But Denis, you've shared so many interesting things here and so much valuable information. I think a lot of people would want to connect with you. Where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not as active as I should be or could be, but I'm on LinkedIn. It's Denis O'Shea, DenisOshea.
Okay.
And then my company is mobile-mentor.com, and we're a managed service provider in the IT industry. So we help companies, manage all their devices, be secure, help their employees be productive. And if you're interested in reading about the research we did at the end of last year, we put that on an independent website. It's called the endpointecosystem.com. Endpoint means all the devices we use in all our applications. So endpointecosystem.com. And the research is there free for anyone to download and use. You can write your own blogs and stories. Just please give attribution and mention to Mobile Mentor because we commissioned the research, but we did it to help organizations understand what's going on with their remote workforce, what's happening with Gen Z, what can we learn, how can we prepare ourselves for the future. So,
well, I'll make sure to put all of those links in the show notes, and they'll be over on the website for this podcast, which is www.seatpodcast.com. So you'll be able to find them and you'll be able to connect with Denis. Thank you so much for joining us today, Denis. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jane. It's a privilege to be on your podcast. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to A Seat at the Table. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I'd love to hear about it. Your feedback powers this show. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Also, share episodes you found valuable on LinkedIn or other social media and call out your biggest insight or takeaway from the program. And don't forget to tag me, Jane Singer. I love seeing which episodes you liked best. And if you have time, please leave a review on any of the major podcast channels. Also, don't forget to check out our website, seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. You'll find all kinds of bonus content there, including free ebooks, discounts on apps and other products, as well as a preview of upcoming podcast episodes. You can also send a message with any thoughts, feedback, or suggestions there, and yes, I will read them. Thank you for joining me today and supporting the show. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in our next episode of A Seat at the Table.